This lesson is about absolute value and adding and subtracting integers. First thing we have to look at is what is an integer. These are all your whole numbers. They're opposites in 0. So if you think about it, whole numbers, you have like 2, 3, 4. They're opposites, so you have like -2, -3, and -4. Oops, that's a negative. And also 0, considering it's not a positive nor a negative. Absolute value talks about the distance between a number and 0 on a number line. When you see this symbol, it means that this is the absolute value of x, and it's always positive. So if you think about 0 here on your number line, and we want to talk about like the absolute value of 1, well, 1 is one place away from 0. We want to talk about the absolute value of -1. -1 is one place away from 0 on your number line. So that absolute value is always going to be positive. So if you're looking at the absolute value of 4, it's going to be 4 because it's 4 hops away from 0. If you're looking at the absolute value of -6, it's going to be 6 because it's 6 places away from 0. The absolute value of 0 is 0 because it's 0 places away from 0. The absolute value of -5.2 is going to be 5.2 because it is 5 2/10 places away from 0. So absolute value is very important when we talk about adding and subtracting integers because you're going to think of these numbers in their absolute value and just apply the rules. So if you're adding two numbers with like signs, meaning positive, positive, negative, negative, then you're going to find the sum. You're always finding the sum of their absolute values and then use the sign common to both. When you're adding two numbers with unlike signs, meaning positive, negative, or negative, positive, you're going to find the difference of their absolute values and then use the sign of the number with the greater absolute value. So if you look at -52 plus -78, you think about having two of the same signs. You've got two of the same things. So you have 52 negatives here in one side and 78 negatives on the other side. So if you put all of those together, you're going to have 130 negatives. If you have 115 positives and then 63 negatives, well, a bunch of those are going to cancel each other out. When you have one positive, one negative, they cancel each other out. So what you're going to do is take 115 and take 63 and actually subtract them. Find their difference because you want to subtract the 63 negatives out of the 115 positives. So it's going to leave you with 52. So then again, when you have a negative and a positive, like in this one, -212 plus 175, you're going to subtract. You're going to take 175 out of the 212. But this time your answer is going to be negative because you have more negative values in this -212 than you have positive values in the 175. So the same concept will continue on through here. If you are doing this, and what I want you to do is pause your video, and I want you to complete these right here. And then unpause it, and you'll see what the answers are. Take a second and check your answers and see if you're correct. So double sign, what this means is like if you're adding a positive, you need to add in the end. When you are adding a negative, you're going to actually be subtracting. When you're subtracting a negative, you're going to actually be adding the values. And when you're subtracting a positive, you're actually going to be subtracting the values. So when you're adding a negative to the 12, you're going to have -12. When you have -28, you're going to treat it like a +28. When you have minus +17, you're treat it like a -17. Positive 52, you're going to treat it like a 52. So here, subtracting integers is the same as adding. It's opposite. That's the key there. What I like to do is look at it and look at the two terms. Here I have a +8. Here I have a -14. I put the terms together. So now we go back, we revert back to the adding rules. So a +8 and a -14 means that I take the absolute value of both and subtract since the one is positive and the one is negative. So I'll get -6. Here, I look at it as a -27 and a -13. I put those together. So a -27, -13, they're both negative. I'm adding. So I'll get -40. Here I have a 31 and a -12. -12 makes it positive, okay, based on our rule right up here. So if you have a 31 and a +12, you're going to put them together at 43. So 31 minus negative 12 is actually positive 43. So the next one you're going to see, you have a negative 10 and a negative 16, or minus negative 16. So you have a negative 10 and a positive 16. Put those together and you're going to get a positive 6. So at this point, pause the video and continue with the last 4 and then check your answers. Now that you've checked your answers, what you have to remember when adding and subtracting integers is when you're adding integers, same sign, you add their absolute values and keep the sign the same. Subtracting, or when you're adding different signs, you subtract the absolute values and take the sign of the larger absolute value. When you're subtracting, you group them based on their signs. Like if you have minus a negative, well, minus negative makes it that positive. When you have a negative 27 minus 13, it's like having the negative 27 and a negative 13, and you put those together.